Hello, and welcome to the Exponential Growth Podcast, powered by Analyst Investors. I'm your host, David Olivencia, co-founder of Analyst Investors, and a passionate advocate for leveraging innovation and technology to drive success. In this podcast, we'll dive into the strategies that top leaders, investors, and entrepreneurs are using to navigate and thrive in this era of accelerating technological change. Whether you're looking to lead more effectively, make smarter investments, or understand how to harness disruptive technologies for exponential growth, this podcast is for you. Each episode will feature conversations with visionary thinkers, industry pioneers, and innovative leaders who are redefining what's possible in today's rapidly evolving world. So if you're ready to start and stay ahead of this curve, let's get started. This is Exponential Growth. All right, everyone. Well, hey, welcome to the first Exponential Growth podcast of 2026. It's an honor today to have a friend, somebody who I've known, say maybe the last several years or so, and watched his career from afar. And he was just a serial entrepreneur. Also a football player too. We can maybe go into that as well. But was a co-founder of Swift Media that got bought by a NASDAQ company. A co-founder of something called Irish Beef, which is a restaurant roll-up. I think at some point had like 200 employees or something beyond it, and it got acquired. And then was the co-founder of Mavely, that was bought by Later, a company called Later. And this is all public information. You can do the Google, but it was bought for $250 million. So that definitely with this leader that we're going to interview, serial entrepreneur, has seen a lot of change, a lot of technology, different industries, right? So can share that perspective. So it's a warm honor to welcome to the podcast, Evan Wray. Welcome, Evan.
David, thanks so much. I'm really, really excited to be here. And I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing on the podcast and with your fund. It's really neat to see. So again, honored to be here. Excited to talk through some of these experiences.
Excellent. Well, so the podcast is about exponential growth, and you've done it in multiple industries, multiple companies. But I always like to start out just so our listeners have the context. Tell us a little bit about you, and you can go early, you can go however you want to go, but just tell us a little, who's Evan Wray?
Yeah, no, happy to. It's wild, right? The early stages kind of shape where you ultimately go. So I'm Evan Wray. I'm originally from Dayton, Ohio, so it's like southwestern part of Ohio. A lot of cornfields, also a lot of amazing people there, and so I grew up there. Played football my whole life, ended up going to Notre Dame. Actually was a walk-on the team, and it was an awesome experience. I kind of learned how to think you're really good at something and then get knocked down and have to keep getting back up over and over again. And kind of it was great experience, very driven experience, very humbling experience too, right? So very, very fun. But in college, when I was playing football, I saw just how crazy fans were about Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish, how much they loved them, and I always knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. My dad was actually a historical renovation architect in Dayton, Ohio, and I don't know how much you guys listeners know about architecture, but it's especially historical renovation is it's almost art, right? And so it's taking buildings 100, 150, 200 years old and restoring them so that they are functional in today's codes, but still look beautiful. And so there's like a creative mindset to it.
And well, they keep their historical, view as well, right? I lived in Old San Juan for a long time. Right?
So
you had all and there's all the bureaucracy and everything there, right? That makes sure you got to do it the right way and all that.
You have to do it right. And then there's also like preserving the history of it, right? And so that was my dad's lens, and I would say he was actually more creative than he was business oriented. And then my mom was very business oriented, but I kind of grew up just like puttering around my dad's little show a small office, like learning like what it was to do business. Um, and so that was like super motivating for me. But yeah, so I always knew I wanted to start something. So we started. I say we, me and another guy, Sean O'Brien has done he's been a co-founder for everything I've done. He and I started this company eventually called Swift Media, and the idea was we wanted to do branded emojis, and we wanted to just let our friends send Notre Dame leprechauns to each other in text messages. Was like kind of the college dorm room idea, if you will. But we ended up like kind of pursuing that post college. We actually got really small friends and I guess friends investment, not friends and family, friends investment, and we're off to the races. And we ended up getting like the licensing agreements for Notre Dame, for Ohio State, for purposely didn't do Michigan. No, just kidding. Joking for the users there, the listeners there. We got Michigan. But we ended up getting like hundreds of schools, and we ended up getting Disney, and we ended up getting Fox and Universal and NFL and NBA and La Liga and all these big licenses, and packaged them into emojis, and then ultimately distributed them through a bunch of different messaging apps. And we were just kind of like didn't know what we were doing. We were just making it up as we went. As we were 22 at the time, and ultimately backed our way into building basically a mobile ad network. And at any given point, there were hundreds of millions of users that we were leveraging from our messaging app partners that were using our emojis across the globe, really. And that became like a pretty cool business. And ultimately, a public company at the time, NASDAQ listed, was called Monotype. They came in and acquired the business when we were 25, and we were like negotiating with that team, which was just a fun experience. So that was like the first entrepreneurial venture. Was an awesome outcome for everyone. But I knew then, I was like, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur, and that kind of took me on my other walks of entrepreneurial life. But that's like me in a nutshell, if you will, right now.
Yeah, well, then you went from there. It looks like to Irish beef, a little, kind of a bit of a restaurant roll up, a little bit of was it like an Irish themed restaurant area, or what? What was that?
Yeah, it's actually funny you said so. So the next thing was Irish. That was really to I'd always been fascinated, and I actually had a mentor and a friend who was very big into the restaurant business and the franchising business. And I just thought it was fascinating. I thought it was in the theme of exponential growth. It was maybe less exponential than tech, but it was very scalable in terms of you can you could build systems that can grow very nicely, and you kind of have these unit economics of these individual restaurants. So we ended up doing that. We actually, I said it was called Irish Beef, was because we bought into it was actually the Arby's brand, so like beef restaurants,
Yeah.
and it was me and Sean and then one other guy, Kevin Kennefic, who are all Notre Dame guys. So it was like,
Okay.
again, not super creative, but we went down that path. We learned a ton. There ended up being about 300 employees at that organization. We learned a lot about the joke in restaurants actually is like you make your money on the right side of the decimal instead of the left. So it's all about cost controls. It's all about scalability. And then
Yeah.
what we saw with Swift and what we saw with Irish Beef was that culture was key. And if you enabled the team, if you set the right metrics in place, if you gave them a vision to shoot for, um, it was amazing what people would do. And I think people really wanted that unlock. And that's something that's kind of continued with me. And we can talk about a lot more.
Yeah.
Really continued with me into the next thing, which was ultimately Mavely.
Yeah. So on this the exponential growth, we want to talk about what are trends that you're seeing, and to the listeners out there, you have a unique viewpoint on what are trends that are out there, right? And
Yeah.
and what should our users, because we talk about trends, how do you invest, and then leadership, but you have a unique viewpoint on what you're seeing are big trends that our listeners out there should be aware of. Maybe talk a little bit about just some of the trends you're seeing. Maybe you can do it in the context of Mavely and what you're seeing there.
Yeah.
Just your thoughts there.
Yeah, no, I happy to. So Mavely, for those listeners who don't know, is it's an influencer marketing platform.
It was acquired by later, like David, like you mentioned, in January of I guess 2025. So now last year, it's been about a year. It was acquired by later, but backed by Summit Partners, which is about a $50 billion private equity fund. And now we're all one integrated platform, about 400 team members, growing really, really fast. And it's in the creator space. It's in the creator economy. And so as I look at like trends, maybe I'll talk about three big ones I see right now, David. So one is just like the creator trend generally. Second one is how data, um, I would say data and domain expertise are going to be critical for this next wave of AI and innovation. And then the third trend we can maybe hit on in the context of Mavely is regardless of industry or technology advancements, is vision, mission, values, metrics are the thing that matters when you're building a company, especially through hypergrowth, right? So I'll talk like creator economy first. So with Mavely, where we started to grow, and then ultimately where later as a business has gone, is we focused on what we call we're everyday influencers. So a lot of times you would think of when we first started the business in 2019, Kim Kardashian as like the celebrity influencer type was really popular. That's great for a subset of brands, but we realized that hey, as you move forward, influencers are going to be a thing, creators are going to be a thing, but not every brand's going to resonate with certain types of influencers or certain aspirational influencers. There's going to be more mass market influencers or more relatable influencers. So that was the idea of like everyday influencer, and anyone and everyone could become an influencer. And
Yep.
that's a trend that's just accelerated massively. And so you see it doesn't matter if you're West Coast, East Coast, Midwest, South, North, if you're in tech, if you're in fashion, if you're in beauty, if you're in B2B, if you're in financing, like I would argue, David, you're an influencer now, right? In terms of what you're doing with the podcast and what you're doing with your funds. And everyone now has an outlet, everyone now has a platform, big and small. And consolidating like that supply and then directing it as a brand or a service or a fund is super, super powerful. And I think we're still in the early innings of where that's going to go as a means to like shift to be like the next wave of advertising generally. I think the creator economy is ultimately going to be as big or bigger than paid search and paid social because it
Totally.
covers so many different aspects. So
And you got all these I mean, like you said, I mean, I guess I'm an influencer, but you've got lots of people that are influencing in different ways. And then how do you attach that to marketing and eyeballs and attention? And there's so much opportunity there. So I totally agree. It's a huge, huge trend that our listeners should stay in front of.
it's massive and it's also super entrepreneurial, right? So like there's a like anyone can now, especially with AI, right? And then this kind of rolls into the second trend of all these tools are enabling, Lovable. You can build a website or an app in no time, right? Like 5 minutes and you have a new experience. With some of these agentic flows, you can actually set up a Shopify account. You can have them start to run not fully deploy your ads yet, but like run your creative and A/B test. And like so you're
Totally.
starting to get all of the trends are rolling towards solopreneurs or the gig economy or the ability to build your own business from scratch, frankly, right? And I think that's really exciting time for a lot of people. It's also like a really cool economic, I would say, equalizer for a lot of folks. So that's one big thing that's happening. As you play it forward and how we did it with Mavely and now with Later as the larger umbrella, um, the first party data, proprietary data, and then domain expertise, I think we're gonna start hearing. I think you're hearing a lot about data already. I think you're going to be hearing a lot more about how do you bring domain experts and like the humans in the loop or the exceptions to the rule, like those decisions. How do you map that into your analytics and your AI processes to actually have business outcomes? So that's where at later we've now done this with matching a brand's budget and a brand's goals and a brand's timeline to that of the number of creators that are maybe in that demographic or have promoted similar brands in the past or happen to be the right rate for whatever reason for that brand. So I think that's going to be a big story over 2026 and beyond is like how do uh, investors, companies, marketers use not only first party data and proprietary data, but how do you map it with human domain expertise to draw like insights and decisions. And then you
Hmm.
layer that on top of AI and it goes even faster, right? So to me, that's like the second like exponential trend that's happening here. And it's gonna cover like I think you're hearing this whole thing of like what is like the services based businesses are now becoming software businesses as AI can automate a lot of stuff. But
Oh yeah.
gonna only be as good as the first party data, and it's only gonna be good as the domain expertise that's built into the system, right? So, and then the last one I would say, in like this rule of three, if you will, is um, is definitely around the value and how critical it is, especially for like early entrepreneurs listening or entrepreneurs that are starting to go through hyperscale or hypergrowth stages, is the power of a very, very clear, big but clear vision, mission, the values behind that, and then the metrics that track towards that. And it's I think a lot of mistake that, and I made this mistake too early on, is when you're a small team, or really when you're sub 50, sub 100 folks, you can know everyone in the office. You can go talk to them. You don't really need to have the processes and systems, in place to keep everyone on the rails. But as you grow, inevitably more processes will come out, inevitably more layers will come out, which is fine. And I would just say like don't feel like you have to over process things, especially in the hypergrowth stage, because things break. But
Yeah. And they change a little bit too, right? You're
they change so much, right? And like building a company from 0 to 10 million is very different from 10 to 50 and 50 to 100 and 100 to a billion, right? So like, and we joke at Mavely, we went through like most companies take 5 to 7 years to go through the growth we went through in about 6 months. And
Mm.
it was just wild. But the thing that didn't waver was we had a very clear vision, a very clear mission on like how we were going to operate. We had super clear values that we hired and fired on.
Yeah.
And then, probably most importantly, we cascaded metrics very publicly to the whole company so that every day, every hour, every individual contributor, up to their manager, up to the leadership, knew exactly like I'm doing this, I'm turning this knob, I'm hitting this keyboard, which is making this metric move, which is making my division's metric move, which is making the company's metric move. And we were
Like
pretty,
very clear alignment, right? Very clear alignment. Everybody knows exactly what they're doing, and you have these reinforcing values. I don't know. I was just reading a book about something about the value. I mean, I've always known about values and their importance on
yeah,
it, but there was a reinforcing fact that said, you should always then communicate. Oh, I read shoe,
Shoe
shoe,
Dog,
shoe dogs.
great
Love
book.
that book. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
And I think it was that book where they were talking about how there's some of the values and how they reinforce the values at every chance they get, or just they use them and they reinforce them. But that was a great book, by the way. Great book.
I highly recommend. I'm literally looking at it on my bookshelf right here. But no, it's amazing, and I think that nails it, right? So like the point of a vision, right, is just to have when the CEO is not in the room, or when the leader's not in the room, or when the manager's not in the room, is like everyone knows where you're pointing, and no, and frankly, it's aspirational. It helps recruit people. It helps retain people. It helps people like do more than what they think they're capable of because we're doing this together and we're going to this big vision together, right? And so, but that's like happened in 5 to 10 years. And then
Yeah.
you've got your mission is like, okay, what am I doing every day? Like what's our goal every day
Totally.
as a business? And then the values are what's the operating cadence, all right? So like, what kind of people do you want to work with? What kind of people do you want to hire? What kind of people do you want to retain? What are the non-negotiables of if someone crosses a line on the values is like they're not here anymore, right? Because it's our value system.
Totally.
And if you get those all lined up, and then you have the metrics, and then you hold people accountable on the metrics, and it's I've watched it at Swift. I say we being me and Sean, but it's really me. I didn't do a very good job of necessarily setting that up, and I wanted to control everything. Like I wanted to be, I was a young CEO. Like I wanted to like be in the weeds of everything, and I wanted to control everything. And I think we grew really nicely as a business. I think we could have grown a lot faster if I had been more metrics oriented and less like control oriented, if you will.
Oh, yeah.
Fast forward, fast forward to Mavely, we just hired the best people in the world, gave them amazing vision, set very, very clear metrics, and then frankly, I got out of the way and let the world-class folks do their thing. And that's that creates a special thing that does help because scaling is a mess regard like there's always a fire or 10. You're always constantly trying to prioritize where to put your energy. You never have enough people. You never have enough resources. Like you're just always on this there's always something wrong, right? But if
Totally,
everyone
totally, totally.
truly believes in that vision, and then you're driving towards that, and you're all rowing in the same direction, and your metrics are making sure the rowing is actually going in the right direction.
Right, right.
Um,
Or and you're calibrating. Hey,
you're
this metric
calibrating,
is off.
yes.
Hey, let's calibrate a little bit, right? You can.
Yeah, and I think that's something that is a big unlock, and it gives people a lot of clarity, teams a lot of clarity when maybe you're in an environment where it is, pretty unpredictable, which is every scaled startup ever. So
Yeah, well, kudos. It's an amazing career, a lot of success, and I know you're just kind of getting warmed up. So lot of great things, a lot of great things
I hope
ahead.
so. I hope so.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, so now investing, right? So now we're in this time of a lot of different things going on. So how are you thinking? You've been in companies, you've had invest resources in companies. You're also on some boards that I saw a couple advisory boards
Yeah,
of
yeah.
some companies. Just how are you thinking about investing and investing the assets that you have, but then like just broader thoughts that you could say to our listeners who are diverse, everything from college kids to senior executives to retirees, all kinds of stuff. So just your thoughts on investing in times of exponential growth.
Yeah, well, so I think a couple things. I think there's different types of investing, and I do think we are in a maybe like a societal goal of like you do hear the 22-year-old kid who went from zero to a billion right overnight or stuff like that, and you always hear about those one-off stories, but the vast majority of folks are not doing that, right? And no one ever publicizes us as like, oh, I started the thing and it completely flopped, and
Totally,
right?
right, exactly.
No one ever writes like does a press release about that. But the reality is, I do think in the time of like so much information and so many different technology waves, the one constant I would say is like you anyone you invest with, be it a money manager that does mutual funds and ETFs, or a venture fund like yours, David, and anything in between, it all comes down to the people. You gotta trust who you're investing with. You gotta trust who you're partnering with. You gotta trust who you're founding your company with. Like it has to come down to the people because I've been in deals that have gone sideways, but they were with great people. And either you may or may not make money, you may or may not get the money out, but you sure as heck get value out of that. Either like worst case learnings, but best case like that person's a good person, they're doing something else, they have a connection. Like there's something there. And I've also been in deals where it's like I either didn't know or didn't wasn't quite sure about the person, but that saw like a great opportunity. And those like 9 times out of 10 don't work out the way you want them to. And so for me, it comes down to the people is one. Two, especially to the younger listeners, I think there is this. So unless you're like a professional like yourself, and you have like network access and really like asymmetric access to talent, businesses, and capital, especially when you're young, like the earlier and often you can invest in just like general stock market, the better, right? And when you think about it, is like the point of the S&P 500 is to invest in the 500 biggest companies. And so naturally, those are going to change, and the ones that are the biggest companies in the world are going to be companies that adopt humanoid robots. They're going to be companies that adopt AI. They're going to be companies that adopt, synthetic biology. They're going to be like those are going to be the companies. And so like rather than trying to again for the general retail investor, rather than trying to pick a one-off like high flyer that can make invest 10,000 bucks and make 100 million, 99 times out of 100 you're better off just investing in like an S&P 500. The exception goes to someone like yourself, David, is like you're in it all day, every day. Like that's all you do. You talk to founders all day. You have unique networks, unique access. But that's because that's your profession and that's what you're like doing. And
Sure.
that's different than say a retail investor trying to buy the next, meme crypto coin or whatever it ends up being. And so I just think like I think we're gonna wake up in 10 years and the especially the younger folks is like the ones that just said, "Hey, I'm going to put it away, forget it, and have a percentage of my income go to the S&P 500." Are going to be way better off than the ones that tried to pick the next cryptocurrency or the next Bitcoin or the next whatever. And it's like not sexy, but
Totally.
it's like it's math. Like compounding is a very real thing, and it's funny. I remember when we sold Swift. Um, I made more money than I ever thought I'd have at 25, and I kind of like did most of it in like an S&P 500-ish strategy. And then I had some of it where I'm like, oh, all my friends are starting companies and like I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna like invest in this thing and this thing and like one or two turned out well and like most of them are sort of just like either zeros or like whatevers. And
Trending to zero.
yeah, trending it's like been around for 10 years and nothing I haven't heard from him in a while. It's like so I think like if I now there was great learnings, I made a ton of great friends. Like there's other like non-financial benefits of it. But like on a pure financial basis, if I had to do it all over again, I would like invest everything in the S&P 500
Yeah.
or in folks like yourself. But like I think that's like as I think about it is like it's about the people, about being long-term oriented and don't try to overcomplicate stuff. Like I think my view is the more complicated a structure is or an opportunity is, the more likely like something's get like trying to be hidden, is the
Yeah.
way I think about it.
Totally. And I think there is something to that, right? This, I mean, just the like you're talking S&P, not totally the. I think actually that's what Warren Buffett says. If you know it, just go to the S&P and you'll do it.
For
You
most
know,
people, that's the best thing to do, right?
and and then by the way, you're not giving it to a fund, like a mutual fund manager and paying
Yep.
a fee and all that kind of stuff, which is, there's just all these like things about just financial literacy. There's just kind of like this base simplicity stuff. But this whole power of compounding, it's phenomenal. I think it's like it is the whatever eighth wonder of the world.
And it works
And
both ways, right? And I think that's the other thing is something I'm personally like fairly passionate about is like early childhood like financial education.
totally,
Right? Because a lot of folks come out of high school, regardless if they go to college or not, and like they don't necessarily have the either from the parents or from the school system, they don't have the financial like they don't understand compounding, right? So like
totally,
compounding works awesome when you're investing in stocks, equities. It works not awesome when you have credit card debt, right? And it's like
totally,
both compound.
totally. Oh no, it's well, I mean, credit card rates were, I don't know, 25, 29, whatever percent. I mean, I think they're potentially going to pass something. We'll see. They're going to where that might go down to 10%, but that's like a mega wealth destroyer that you'll never get.
Yeah.
And then you throw in some student loans on top of that stuff. So yeah, it's like offense and defense. So you definitely want, you want to be playing, as for those who are younger out there, you want to be playing offense, man, and
Yeah.
know that those things are, those credit cards are killers.
Yeah, and the other, and especially again, I know there's different audiences here, but I also think like as when I was the CEO of Mavely, now the president of Later, like I also watched not again not young or old, but just like enterprising folks just raise their hand early and often to take on like hard challenges um to proactively solve issues or and say like, hey, like this is an issue. Here are three solutions I considered. I implemented this one, and I'm just giving you a heads up, right? And I think taking the like I can do it attitude or raising your hand and going for it and just and taking like a chance to do something that's maybe out of your comfort zone. As a CEO and now as a president and as a co-founder, is like I always looked at those folks in the organization as, wow, you're willing to, raise your hand, you're willing to tackle something hard. And I know it's hard, right? So like it may or may not be successful. Hopefully it is, but either way, you're going to learn a ton. I know that you're an enterprising individual, and so if you hit it on this one, awesome. But if not, I'm going to make sure that you're on the track for a promotion, or you're on track to lead a division, or you're on track to do whatever it is. And so I think that's the other way to invest. I'd say is like investing with your time and
Yeah.
and investing with raising your hand for the thing that maybe feels a little uncomfortable, or oh, I don't have the resume, or I'm not qualified to do it enough. Reality is everyone's making it up as they go. So
Totally.
so just go for it. Like try and see what happens. And worst case, you learn a lot.
Totally. Totally. And it goes in the last part around leadership, right? So we're in these exponential times, a lot of things happening, a lot of change happening really quick. You talked, I think you set the you talked about vision, mission, and values, which I think are great for if you're leading a company and a company. But actually, too, by the way, I write about it in my book. It's actually good for you as an individual. Like, what is your
Yeah.
vision? What is your
Yeah.
mission? What values do you have, right? And then what are the metrics that you're going to measure yourself, on them? And that's actually the foundation for being a networking excellence, which I write in my book. But in addition to the vision, mission, values, the metrics, right, which I think stand the test of time, you can give regardless of what the heck's going on. And then what you talked about in terms of, hey, leaders, I think leaders raise their hand up, young, old, CEOs.
Yep.
There's always a tough problem, right? Anything else you want to share to the listeners out there, just when you think about leadership in these times of exponential growth, what are the key takeaways or things that our listeners should get from you?
Yeah. It's a great question. And I think the thing that I would say, especially for leaders, is you have to be in these times of like AI, okay, generally, cool. Well, what does that mean? It's the same. It's like the same thing as saying like the internet. Like, well, okay, there's a lot of nuances to it. You have to be curious, and you have to legitimately want to like dive deeper into these industries. And I think like one of the things we've seen at and more so at later, kind of post acquisition is we use AI across our entire business. We're an AI forward, like we migrated the whole stack to an AI native stack when it wasn't. Like we did a bunch of things, but they were very concerted efforts that came down directly um, from the executive team and were held to account for the whole entire organization. And we knew it probably wasn't going to pay dividends day one, and it was going to be like a bit of a longer term play. We think we're going to wake up in a few years, and if you're not an AI native infrastructure in the influencer space, you're just going to get
You're
smoked.
done.
Like
Yeah,
you will be out of business, right? And I think that's always the challenge for leaders generally in any industry, but especially fast moving spaces, is you don't want to bet the farm on a new technology, but
totally. It's hard. This is hard, right? Because
but you
you
do
got you got
need
to.
to sow a few seeds and have a few farmers in that corner of the field to like make sure and you have a plan and a strategy around it. And I don't know if no one's read The Innovator's Dilemma. It's like I highly recommend reading that book, and it talks about this a lot
A
about
classic.
and like yeah about why startups are successful in markets that feel subscale initially, but because of their exponential growth very quickly become markets that displace legacy businesses. And it's this challenge that like business owners, once you've done the curve up, or you're still on the curve up, is like how do you find that second, third, and fourth product market fit as you're growing. So I would say that just be curious. Don't bet the farm on it, but allocate certain resources and teams to it. I'm a big fan of having like a skunk works team of like mad scientists that are just like literally pushing the boundaries of a lot of different parts of your industry. And if they have a breakthrough, great. If they don't, they're learning, and they're usually like some of the best talent you have. But yeah, I would do that. And then the last thing that I would say, and this is not really for the leaders, and maybe it's more for the um, people coming up in their careers or just graduating college or whatever it is. But someone told me very early on in my career, just like just ask for the cookie in life, right? And like worst case scenario, they say the person you ask, whatever it is, like cookie could be a job, cookie could be a promotion, cookie could be a business opportunity, cookie could be a community event, cookie could be asking your spouse to marry you, like whatever it is, like, but just like ask for it. And in worst case scenario, you get a no and you're in the exact same place you are today. Like best case scenario is it changes the trajectory of your entire life, right? And so like that's a pretty asymmetric risk reward or reward to risk. So
Totally.
that's what I would just say. Again, not for the leaders, still do that, but definitely for the folks coming up in their careers.
I like to ask. Well, so on the ask thing, I think it's funny, right? So by the way, you've raised money for your startups and ventures. I just raised the fund. I was told no 634 times, and
Yeah,
we
it's
raised and we
wild.
raised. It's not it will be public here, but it's a $20 million fund that we've raised.
Congratulations on that too, by the way. That's awesome.
Yeah, and uh and then but you mentioned like ask, right? And like, and so many times in life, like if I just didn't ask, like so many big things would have happened. And then like you mentioned something I thought was just it just kind of drove a point home in my head. It's like it's the most asymmetric thing. It's just there's zero cost to ask somebody something. It costs you zero, but it could be a life-changing, you know, uh outcome, right? So just go. Now it takes a lot of guts, right? Because
Yeah.
a lot of people are really afraid, petrified to be told no. But it's a really it really made me, I mean, it's something I've always known, right? But
Yeah.
just when you said that, it really made me think about that point.
Well, I think it's interesting, and I think especially in this world of I mean the space we're in, right? Social media and kind of like this constant feed and constant measurement against other businesses and other professionals and other people's lives on social media, right? Like there's I feel like there is and I think a risk that especially younger folks have is um, caring so much about what other people think about you. And I know this because I used to be smack dab down this route. Like I was like I really, really, really cared what people I had never met thought about me, and I was probably never going to meet, right? Like and so when you take a step back, it's funny because you start to think about like in reality, like people don't it doesn't matter how much success you have, is like people don't really care a whole lot about you and like outside of your friends and your family and everything like that. Um so there's not really a downside to asking it other than fear of being a little uncomfortable in the ask for 30 seconds. And
Totally.
if you can get through that and you can get good at that, it unlocks amazing things. Like I mean, like I asked my college roommate's dad uh, to invest in Swift when it was a complete like I think we still had the power. It was a PowerPoint. It wasn't There's no Google Slides, right? It was like it was just a joke of a PowerPoint, and he took a flyer on us, and he did insanely well for him personally. But I think he kind of thought it was almost like a charity gift initially, and but if I didn't do that, then would have never started Swift, which would have never changed my life and my family's lives on the first outcome, which would have never gotten me the investor base and the expertise to then start Irish Beef and then ultimately Mavely, which really scaled, right? And so it's just like some of those things, like we same with Swift too. We asked Disney for a license to their digital emoji content when we were 22. We had no business being in the room. It was a cold LinkedIn message, right? Like we had no business being in the room.
Wow.
But
Wow.
we had like four people on the team, and we ended up getting the license to Disney's mobile emojis, right? And it's like same thing with Mavely is like we asked Walmart to be our major anchor retail partner, and when we went
You shouldn't be
into,
afraid to ask big.
yeah,
That's the other
like
thing. Like, well,
go
what?
for it.
Why you don't go for it? If you're in, within, go for it, right? You just
Yeah,
don't know. It's totally asymmetric. Like the worst thing they have to say no. Make a good case for it. Too. Don't just like ask for dumb things, but because I think in all cases you had something reasonable to stand on, right? When you make the
for
ask,
sure.
right?
For sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. And then I think the last thing is, especially like folks that are, either looking to make career moves or new college grads or new high school grads that are looking in the workforce is um whatever interview you're doing, like actually ask for the job. And like that's something that's not done. Like a lot of people will interview and just say, great, I can't wait to hear from you. I hope this interview went well. Um, as a CEO and now president of a lot of companies have scaled, anytime someone says, "Hey, I love this company, I love this role, and I would love to work for you. I really want this job." That's just like a massive exclamation point. And I don't
Totally.
I think I've hired almost every single person that's ever done that, and I have never regretted it because they wanted it and they took a chance on it and they went for it. So that's another thing I would say, like especially in like job hunting, like no one asks for the job they want. They just kind of like show up, do an interview, and wait for your to hopefully call back, right? Ask for it.
Totally. And so, yeah, for those who are listening, oh, what a great piece of advice. No, and it's so true. I mean, it's almost like, yeah, even for the business too. Like, I mean, it's a lesson that goes, it's also a job, but even for the, hey, I'd love for you to be our customer. I'd love for you to be an investor in my
Yeah.
fund, kind of thing, right? Kind of thing. So, well, hey, Evan, I know you got a lot of things going on. You're very busy. I want to thank you for making a priority jumping on the podcast. How can our listeners out there stay connected with you on social, and what's the best way that they can follow you and whatever your next adventures are?
Yeah, no. First of all, thanks for having me, David. Again, like I said, I'm a huge fan of what you guys have built here and are continuing to build. And congratulations again on the fund. That's awesome. That's really really exciting. So, I think the biggest way is just I would just say connect with me on LinkedIn, Evan Ray, and last name is Wray. That's the easiest way. Um, I think I try to take like one-off conversations with especially young folks that are coming up and like wanting to have advice or how to navigate things. So happy to do that. Don't be offended if I don't get back to you. I get a lot of those, but I'll try to get to a bunch of them. But I'd say LinkedIn's the easiest way, David,
Okay.
and go from there. But yeah, no, I love that you do this. I love the podcast. I love where you're investing. I think it really is the like we look across. I think like technology and where the world's going like truly is the great unlock for growth, but also for like wealth creation and wealth equality, that I think is becoming a problem right now. So I think like there's a lot of cool like ripples that what you're doing is creating, which is very cool.
Oh, well, thanks too. And I think Evan, as those young people reach out to you and connect with you, man, there's a lot of great insights that you shared on this podcast, right? So as a first step, you can say, hey, step one, just listen to this podcast, and step two, then they can have a coffee with you or whatever. But Evan, again, really appreciate you jumping on. Wishing you continued success and look forward to seeing you around Chicagoland.
Hey, appreciate it, David. Thanks so much.